Hello and welcome to the Medical Affairs Dialogues. In my previous episodes, you've heard me talk about empowered MSLs. You've also heard me speak about how to empower an MSL in an AI driven environment. But have we paused and thought about emerging MSLs? What is their voice like? What are they planning to achieve in the field? In this episode, we will explore what the next generation of MSLs want and how they want to redefine HCP engagement. My guest and I, we have been talking about this, and my guest for this episode is Heather Leskinen. Welcome to the episode, Heather.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on. And I'm really excited to tell you about my journey. And I just had so much help from others when I was trying to get this position. So I really appreciate the chance to be able to return the favor and pay it forward.
Sure. So before we go any further, let me introduce you to my audience. Heather is a chemist by training. She has a PhD in cell and molecular biology as well as neuroscience. Currently, she's the new MSL at Aura Biosciences. Her focus therapeutic area is central nervous system regeneration, also ophthalmology and ocular oncology. Thank you, Heather, for agreeing to be a part of this episode. Our topic for today is bridging the trust gap, how emerging MSLs redefine HCP engagement. Before we go any further, Heather, it has always been a tradition in this podcast that we pause and get to know the guest. So I would request you to lay out your career journey. How, from being a chemist, you are an MSL now, and how was that journey like? How did you navigate through the challenges? What happened? Tell me your story.
It's a curvy road, my story, but I think that will be helpful for other people that didn't really have a traditional role to get into the MSL position. So it started basically back with my during my bachelor's in both chemistry and biochemistry. I was pretty much told that getting a PhD would pigeonhole you into a specific job. So with that advice, I didn't go directly from a BS to graduate school, but later, I learned that that's not at all true. A PhD really opens up so many doors. So don't let that stop you, I guess. But I certainly don't regret the road that I took to get to where I am today. But due to that advice, after my bachelor's, I was a chemist for several years. I was mostly in quality control, making sure that the products were what they were supposed to be. I liked the bench work. I liked the attention to detail. And then I was helping people, although it was in a rather indirect way. But I knew that I could do more and feel more fulfilled, maybe get a little bit more mental stimulation and make more of an impact on the world. So I did some online research for chemistry or life sciences that sounded interesting. I stumbled upon the MSL position and I was super intrigued and thought I'd be awesome at that. I don't think I'd ever be bored again. And all the other cool jobs that I looked at, you also needed a terminal degree. So I basically figured I got to go get one of those. So I completed a PhD program in both cell and molecular biology, as well as neuroscience. And I actually studied optic nerve regeneration in zebrafish. So during grad school, I actually made an effort to conduct informational interviews with as many MSLs as I could. Not a single one of them said that they disliked the job or wished that they were doing something else. And the more that I learned as I did these interviews, basically it sounded like the MSL position was just the perfect fit for like my skills, my aptitude, my drive, and finding a way to have that self-fulfillment and really making a positive impact on people in a much more direct way. So after earning my PhD, I actually took a few months off to travel because grad school is all consuming. And it was then a full-time job to apply to jobs. So I spent about 4 to 5 months solely applying to MSL positions. It ended up being, I think, over 400 different jobs that I applied to. A lot of rejections, but in the end, I got the job, so it worked out. But from my informational interviews with the current MSLs, a lot had said that building a network was key. It was knowing someone that was already in the job or at the companies that you were targeting. So I did my best to establish a network on LinkedIn. That helped to get a couple of phone calls, but it didn't really get me that much farther. But the other most common answer I heard was that the stars just aligned and the job just fell into their lap and it was perfect. And I hated hearing that because I was like, how am I supposed to do that? What's the protocol? But then that's exactly what happened to me. I applied for the company for which I currently work. And a bunch of interviews later, I was offered the job. I was absolutely ecstatic, and I'm so happy as I am right now. And I really look forward to sharing these experiences with you during my first year and a half as an MSL. But just to preface with that, I've only been an MSL for a pre-commercial company. So my answers are really just based on that experience in a small startup company within a rare disease. And anything that I do say is my own opinion and doesn't reflect those of the company for which I work.
Absolutely fantastic beginning, because this is what we want to hear. We have, as you know, there is so much information available about seasoned MSLs, about MSL who are driven by AI, and they are navigating this through. But today's episode is focused on new MSLs, emerging MSLs like you, because we want to hear that voice. So beautifully placed. Now, to lay the foundation of our discussion, I think the first question should be, how would you define the role of an MSL, and what does a typical day look like for you in this particular role?
So a medical science liaison is a really versatile role, and personally, I do a lot of things. The most important part of the role, in my opinion, is that we establish long-term relationships with KOLs to add value to their practice, to ultimately help patients. And that's not only with the principal investigators involved in clinical trials, which is mostly what I'm doing, but also with KOLs that are from the referring or community practices. I'll elaborate on specifics later, but the ability of an MSL to be a trusted, scientific, and non-biased peer is essential to the position. Internally, we gather insights from interacting with KOLs and delve into those to see what the KOL community is thinking or doing or moving towards. So staying in touch with that is important for the company to move the needle, per se. And what that looks like for me right now is progressing research, not selling more products or expanding the number of indications, since we're still in clinical trials. But this could come from trends in what I'm hearing. For example, if I notice that many KOLs in my area are lacking some kind of key information, I can bring that back to my team, and maybe we can create an educational material to bridge that knowledge gap. But overall, the role is really defined by the ability of MSLs to build and maintain relationships, to help physicians help patients, whether that be directly through the physicians and making an impact on their practice, or more indirectly through the company by creating educational opportunities or initiating new studies. But a typical day, I love that one day is never the same as the one before or even your next day. As you've likely heard, an MSL is the CEO of their territory. I plan how and who and when I'll meet with KOLs. So that entails research into the KOL's background, and what value I can bring to them. Also scheduling those appointments and actually executing the whole shebang to be able to get to their office. So any likely day, I'm also trying to stay on top of expenses, making sure to record those interactions. I hate it when things pile up, so I try to stay on top of those details. But agility and adaptability is really the name of the game in my specific position as part of a pre-commercial company in clinical trials, as the needs of any of my trial sites may change at any given moment. But also as part of a small team, I'm also involved in other projects within medical affairs, and also cross-functionally. So for the latter, I'm actually the lead for our pivotal trial. So I bring back the latest news from our interdepartmental meetings to keep the MSL team updated. I'm also involved in insight analysis. I've helped plan medical affairs presence at major meetings. And in general, I like that in my team, I'm able to bring up anything that I think can help the team itself or the company at large. I am very detail oriented, so I notice small things that may need changes in presentations, but I also look at the bigger picture and try to bring back ideas for how to make a presentation have a better flow or fill in a particular gap if I notice that some KOLs have the same questions or on a particular slide from a presentation just based on feedback. So maybe we then need to add an additional background slide to fill that gap. So my team's super receptive, and I absolutely love that I can make an impact in even those small ways.
Amazing. So, the way we want to explain this is you are the bridge between your company and the HCP or the KOL. And building the relationship, building the trust is key. So, what does bridging the trust gap between HCPs and your company mean to you? And how do you see your role contributing to that bigger mission?
That is a great question. In general, I think that pharma has a reputation of being only for profits, and the benefit of the products to the patients is lost behind that industry greed, which is really unfortunate. Pharmaceuticals exist and are approved by the FDA and other governing agencies to improve people's well-being. Personally, I couldn't work for a company that didn't truly believe in their product and the impact that it could have on patient health outcomes. So I think that the MSL position is just perfectly positioned to show that KOLs and basically show them that pharma isn't all that bad. And I think that this can be viewed at kind of more of a micro and a macro level. So at a high level, I think establishing and maintaining the relationship with the KOL is a key component to bridging that trust gap between the clinic and industry. Being viewed and accepted as a scientific peer is what can really show that. And in my particular position, an MSL can serve as the face of a research company. So this is an incredibly important role to begin and continue to bridge that gap by bringing value to KOLs, their teams, and also to patients. In order to execute this process, it is not easy. For example, if I do a cold call at an office, it's not uncommon for me to be initially perceived as a sales rep and get a bit of a cold shoulder. KOLs are extremely busy, so justifying that value that I'll bring them is crucial to getting any time in their hectic schedule. And in order to get that time, it's often necessary to kind of work your way up. Honestly, being kind and showing good manners has just been key to getting many meetings with KOLs. I feel like a genuine smile and an introduction to the front desk associates can usually get through to someone, even if they're having a rough day. I know someone showing their authenticity can really turn around my day. So I try to do the same for others. But I really think that face-to-face interaction makes a much greater impact on a person, and that warmth and one-on-one communication makes all the difference. So to sum up, it's the little things, in my opinion, that can end up making big changes.
No, very true. Very true. And you've highlighted some nuances which will be very helpful for emerging MSLs and your peers. Um, so, credibility is something that we will talk about, and I think it comes with the role. As someone new to the company and the field, how do you plan to build scientific credibility and foster trust with HCPs early on in the role? And I'll tell you a little bit why I'm asking this question. Because we always talk about, and majorly the discussions, the information available is always about what the MSL has done to get the trust already, and they are all seasoned, matured, mid tiered MSLs. And my focus has been today to focus the spotlight on emerging MSLs because it's a very tricky situation. I mean, not you, but if we all can step back and think about it, it's a new company, it's a new field, it's a new HCP that you have to build trust and credibility and foster that relationship. How do you step into that role? What are your skills? What are your tactics? What are your strategies here?
Yeah, that it was definitely a learning process. Even still, as I've only been in the role for a year and a half. But for any relationship, I think the PhD, the terminal degree is what you have to show to KOLs, and that's what I had to show, that I'm credible as a scientist.
Mhm.
Um, Once the conversation starts, my role and my therapeutic area training is evident as we discuss the KOL needs and what value I can bring. So after that initial interaction, it's really following up and delivering on that value add to show that authenticity, that I actually mean what I say, and then foster that trust in that relationship.
Great. Um, the next step to this, what you have already laid out, is the communication. That's another key stroke, key skill that really the MSL has to hone. So I want to pause and talk about that a little bit. We know that there are different types of HCPs. Everybody is not one size fits all. No, that won't work here. So you have to hone and cultivate different communication styles. And that just doesn't need your tactic of changing your tone or your approach, but also understanding, having the real effort put in to understand that HCP and cater to that mood, to that style, and to the communication style that he or she will understand. So, my question is, how do you tailor your communication approach when engaging with different types of HCPs? For instance, those who are more skeptical versus those who are more of the early adopters to any drug, any therapy, any product that you are showcasing the knowledge of that, the good benefit of that, and the value that it will bring to the HCP in the practice. How do you modulate, alter, approach different communication styles while dealing with different types of HCPs?
Yes, another great question. I think that both skeptics and early adopters can both provide great insights. It's really just adapting to their conversation type. And as an MSL for a pre commercial company, it's been far easier for me to speak to KOLs who are those early adopters of new therapies. I get much more excited when I'm talking about our data, and that can then bridge into different topics as well to really have a great conversation. I think that it's just fantastic when that happens, and I can gather more insights into what HCPs think of our investigative product, and also the potential they can see in it for helping patients and for use in their practice. But while it is generally easier to have a conversation with those early adapters, skeptical KOLs tend to be more of a challenge, but they can offer just as good of an insight. I think the main sticking point is that while I can share our phase 1 and phase 2 clinical data, new therapies lack that long-term established data that a lot of HCPs want to see. This generally leads to me asking more questions about what are their concerns? What evidence would a KOL like to show that this treatment is efficacious? Or what would you need to change for you to support this treatment option? But both types of KOLs can yield great insights that can really make an impact. It's all about asking the right questions.
Absolutely, you nailed it. um, we cannot ignore data and insights. That's kind of another important backbone of an MSL. How do you plan to incorporate real world evidence, field insights, and clinical data into your discussion to make this discussion more meaningful and impactful and engaging for the HCP? What does the process look like for you? Because you are an emerging MSL. Um, you are learning on the job, and every day you have to really plan how do you position the real world evidence, field insights, clinical data in such a beaded necklace that the HCP really finds your engagement meaningful and worthy of his time. So how do you tackle that part?
Well, these are basically all things that I use in every conversation that I have with a KOL. Um, During my earlier days as an MSL, it was mainly about learning the therapeutic area and spending some good quality time with the literature. A strong scientific foundation is really core to understanding not only the product, but also the disease state. I still go back to papers and review those to keep fresh. I practiced a lot with my team on how to deliver information in a coherent yet concise manner. As a PhD in academia, I was taught to deliver data based on the audience, but adapting presentations to a clinical perspective was almost a slap in the face. Hundreds or thousands of hours can go into
Mhm.
a single figure in a paper. And a lot of academics want to know the granular details of how you reach your conclusions. Now, physicians care about details, but
Mhm.
more so it's the bottom line. They don't have a whole lot of time. So how are they going to use this in practice, and how is it going to help patients? Um, Really, why should they care? So
Yes.
in many interactions, KOLs only have a couple minutes. So they don't have that time to listen to what statistical analysis was performed, what are the specific steps that we used in this particular test, why was this instrument used versus this instrument. I was definitely not used to that. It took a while to learn how to get to the point, to make that impact in a short amount of time, since HCPs have such a limited amount of time. It's not like they have an hour to sit through a lecture from me.
No.
Though I do love it when they do want to get down into the nitty gritty and geek out on preclinical data or the in-depth science that's behind the mechanism of action. So very happy when that does happen. But incorporating field insights has definitely been critical for me regarding KOL interactions, but also in growing and learning this position. For example, the MSL team was able to discover that some topics that we thought were understood by KOLs may need further elaboration. So the company for which I work is pretty much offering a completely new way to approach patient care. It's a new treatment, and this requires a lot of repetition of what we're actually doing. These concepts I thought would be really well understood initially, they weren't. But I'm only given a limited amount of time with these physicians,
Mhm.
and they have competing priorities. A lot of research universities have 20, 30, even more clinical trials that they're running at a time. It would be difficult for anyone in that position to remember the finite details of every protocol. However, this insight provided an opportunity to then change how I'm explaining a particular topic and what type of language we might be using in the future.
Mhm.
Also, for some context there, I stated at the beginning of this interview that I'm an MSL within a rare disease, And currently there's no FDA approved product to treat this cancer. So the vast majority of advancements within this field have just been to radiation treatments. And based on my conversations with KOLs, it seems like most people are not really expecting anything new or anything different when I'm approaching them. So it's also that I think a lot of people know what they know, and habits are hard to change. So people get comfortable with what they know. In regards to clinical data, those are essential to introducing the product and to demonstrating that it can change the field and improve patient health outcomes. However, there's a limited amount of data regarding our investigatory products since we're still in clinical trials, and there's no long-term data, which is essential within the field of oncology. So it can be a bit frustrating during some conversations since that data just doesn't exist yet. But that's part of research. It takes a long time. Not to mention in clinical practice, it takes much longer for this long-term data to manifest than in a laboratory like I'm accustomed to. I worked with zebrafish, so long-term data was rarely more than a few months. And in regards to real-world evidence, that's yet to come for the data for for the company for which I work. But I can bring in that evidence from the current standard of care treatments to talk about the potential for the product. So I really look forward to the point at which I'll actually be able to speak towards real-world evidence.
Absolutely. It's so good to hear that. The reason being is that through this episode, we want to see and hear your voice about the real problems an emerging MSL is seeing. And this is so real. And this is not heard much that, oh, this data is not there, but I have to still convince and engage the HCP. It's even more harder, actually, if you look at it, right? So this is great. Um, I think our discussion will be incomplete if we don't talk about digital engagement and the trust issues that you see. Now, I want to ask you this question with a lot of curiosity. In your view, how can digital platforms and virtual engagements do you think digital platforms and virtual engagements will enhance or it will potentially hinder the development of trust that you are trying to bring to the HCPs? Because you are an in-field emerging MSL, and we are talking about AI, and MSLs are every day using tools and powerful AI tools. Um, but you being in an in field in the field, I want to know what is your view about the digital platforms, virtual engagements that are upcoming. Do you think this will help in um, building the trust with the HCP more, or do you think this will be a hindrance to that process? What's your take on this?
So I like digital platforms for virtual engagements when maintaining previously established relationships or for quick chats
Yes.
when it's just easier to hop on a Teams or a Zoom call. But I think these online interactions can still provide value and also save money on time and travel. They have their place. I will always be a strong advocate for face to face, in person interactions because I believe they yield a better quality and strength of a relationship. We're human. We gain a lot from body language and being able to get a feel for someone. And for me, truly show who I am and that I genuinely care. And also for me, it's easier to trust someone that I've actually met in person. So virtual interactions have their time and place to be efficacious, but I don't think that they can replace an in-person interaction.
I'm so glad you mentioned it and you said it so simply and beautifully. Virtual engagements, digital platforms, the bots, they are all great and has its place. But I think meeting an actual MSL in field and having that engagement will never be able to replace. what the experience is like for both, for the HCP and for the MSL. It cannot be replaced. It can be done with, but the quality, the trust that happens when two people in person meet and go through that engagement sincerely and with utmost honesty and clarity, I think the quality of the engagement, quality of the bond, the quality of the trust is different. And it's no different from meeting two people. I remember meeting you in the MAPS event, and look where we are, right? I don't think if we would have met virtually, the bond, the strength would have been the same. So it's
Completely agree.
speaks about humanity, it speaks about the human nature and the human behavior, how we attach with people with empathy. We get to see different aspects of the person, the verbal aspect as well as the non-verbal aspect of a human being, and that's where the trust lies. So beautifully put, thank you so much for highlighting on that. Now I want to talk about something that's, I think, very important for long term MSL, MSLs and MSL roles. Because you are an emerging MSL, this is something that you and we all should focus very early on. What are the key skills and areas of expertise you aim to strengthen to become a more effective and trusted scientific partner to an HCP? And I ask this question because recently I spoke about the four stages of building a trusted relationship with an HCP, from an MSL point, from an empowered MSL point. But I want to bring the same question for an emerging MSL because it's even harder. The four stages, from the stage one to getting introduced and being aware of each other's presence as an MSL, as an HCP, to going through the four different stages deeper and deeper and becoming a strategic partner, becoming that core value creator with the HCP. It's a it's a very, very steep path. And the MSL at the bottom of the mountain has to see that peak where every MSL desires, whether emerging or an empowered MSL, desires to have a strategic partner and desires to become that strategic partner with that HCP within the territory that you have aimed, right? That you are focusing on. So, with that kind of mindset, what are the key skills and the areas of expertise that you feel you have to strengthen as an emerging MSL in order to become the trusted scientific partner with that HCP that you really desire, that is in that absolute priority list?
So again, as a PhD, I try to stay on top of the literature within the fields, but it might just be the scientist in me. But I think it's really important to maintain awareness as advancements can change the world. And certainly KOLs will be interested in new information. Personally, for improvement, I think that I could come on a little strong at times, and I don't want to scare off anyone before I even have a chance to speak to them. So I need to remember to hold back some enthusiasm at the beginning of a conversation or relationship. So that's just a lifelong thing that I have to work on. But otherwise, I think it's really time. I value the experience that I'm gaining during this year and a half into the MSL role, and I'm constantly learning from my interactions, from my team, and from great resources just like your podcast. I think there's so many fantastic resources out there online, different conferences, societies. All of these things are great tools, and I try my best to soak up all that information. So really, I think it's a time is a big component to just being able to learn and soak up everything.
Very nicely put. Very nicely put. So, this is a more futuristic question because you are the future. And I want to ask you and know your view. What are you seeing ahead in the road? What unmet needs do you currently face in your role? And what are you most looking forward to in the next 5 to 10 years as an in field MSL?
Honestly, I am so fulfilled in my current role with the support from not only my immediate team, but the whole company with its views, its sense of community, their ethics, and really true excitement and belief in the value that we'll bring to patients. So I really lucked out in getting my first MSL role. But I look forward to growing with the company and continuously learning about the current therapeutic areas, as well as additional areas the current product may branch into. I'm excited to see how new, more effective therapies evolve to improve patient lives and see where science takes us as a population. As a scientist at heart, I truly believe in the benefit that certain pharmaceuticals can bring to people. And I think that MSLs can help guide industry down a path that unites us to work side by side with clinicians to improve patient health outcomes. It's it's a bumpy road, but I think that the MSL has a good suspension system and really just the adaptability to navigate this trail to help people in the end and really bridge that gap that we have between MSLs and clinicians.
Beautifully put. Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for bringing in so much information, so much insight to this episode. Thank you.
Thank you. I love this opportunity.
To my viewers, thank you for being a part of this discussion. You heard our guest today. She clearly said that the next generation of emerging MSLs wants to transform the HCP engagement through evidence, empathy, and innovation. Until next time, stay tuned, stay informed, and stay engaged.